art careers. How do I support myself as a painter? All right, I sent this out to a bunch of awesome painters because I have no idea. So the first one was Michael Gaughan. So Michael went here, I think we were in the same class. We graduated in 2003. He's had a varied career over that time. He's had lots of shows. He's done artwork for a lot of records. He does editorial illustrations. Yeah, Michael's the best. I remember I came into Kinko's one day downtown, and he was getting this thing laminated, and it was all pixelated. And his new concept was that he was a caveman rapper. He rapped about being a caveman. So he had made this thing that was like, caveman would be naked, but since he can't be naked rapping, he made this pixelated image of his penis to wear around himself so that he could be a caveman.
Oh my God.
He is a lunatic, and I love him. I think I met him the first day I went here, and he's great. So, super varied, and he does lots of stuff. And he does everything the wrong way. When you apply for grants, there's certain pretentious language you're supposed to use because you think that's what grant writers want to hear, or grant panels want to hear. And he got a state arts board grant by saying, imagine if I got up on stage with a double-necked guitar, and I was playing that guitar, and it was amazing, and I played a sweet guitar solo, and then the guitar dropped and turned into a helicopter and flew away. And he got a grant for that. He couldn't build it exactly as he's imagined because it was slightly dangerous, but he did make a remote control helicopter guitar. So, love Michael. And these are a couple examples of his work. This one's called Your Dad Was Like, What in the World Are You Going to Do with an MA in Curatorial Studies? This is a watercolor. He also works his ass off. He was constantly practically failing MCAT because he didn't do the work that was assigned. He would just show up to a class, do whatever he felt like, and then at the end he'd bring in all the work, and it was always better than his classmates, which made everyone upset and bitter, probably for a good reason. These are a series of watercolors of people texting and driving. They're great. He's got the technical skills to back it up too. Okay, so this is what he said. Work way harder than all the other painters in your school program. Work as hard as animators or caterers or medical students. Get super good at painting. Apply for every opportunity. Let go of the idea that there is only one way to make it as a painter. So Michael doesn't make his living as a painter, but he sells art, but he teaches, he does commissioned work, I don't think he makes any money off rapping. And then he gets grants. Accept commissions and illustration work. Learn how to do something else that will enable you to be a painter, i.e. making websites, teaching, playing jazz music for hire. This is always going to be the thing. Don't be afraid to take things from other people, charity, gifts, grants, asking for help financially, stealing. I'm not really down with stealing, but do you. And then learn to live frugally. That's totally what it comes down to, is you have to be willing to do lots of different things. It really does help to have some skill that you can bank on. For a long time, Michael worked with kids who had autism as basically their personal care assistant. He did that, and then he got into teaching, and then he did a 1.5-year master's in teaching so he could teach in public schools. So he did all of these things, and the more that you have leverage, the more opportunities that you can have. If you have to work really 2 or 3 really shitty jobs to support yourself, that cuts you off from opportunities you might get later. Because you can't do them because you physically don't have the time, or you financially don't have any money to spare to make something. So basically, again, that idea of like this one, learn to live frugally, and learn something else that will be helpful. That stuff you do early on so that you're not screwing yourself at the beginning of your career and having to pay the cost at the end. Or at the end, or close to the end. Expect your painting career to be extremely difficult and short. I don't know if that's in regards to if you actually manage to make a living off of painting, don't think it will last forever. That seems like really good advice, though. Be kind to other people and have fun. Okay, so that is Michael. The next one, duplicate. It was Ashley Barlow. So Ashley was a student she was a graphic design student in a post-bac program, so that means you have a bachelor's degree already. And post-bac program is 2 years, and you take night and weekend classes. And it's very difficult because everyone in it usually has a full-time job. Her job at that point was making and selling art. It seemed like she worked harder than everyone else in the room all the time because she was like doing her work and then constantly hustling, making stuff, doing commissions, doing these sort of photo art direction projects, and making things happen for herself. She's super motivated and was really good at making opportunities, and she hustled her ass off. Like she was at art fairs like every weekend trying to sell stuff. And this is some of her work. This is some collages, painting. Have other jobs outside of just painting. Show your work constantly on multiple channels. You have to share for people to see what you do. Yeah, people have to know who you are. The other thing too is, it's gonna sound bad, but like I wouldn't say that Ashley's stuff is the most original work in the world. And there's a tendency for us to think, I have to be good before I can share my work with other people. That is bullshit. Don't do that, okay? I don't think that Kanye West for a minute ever thought he had to be good. He just assumed he was good and figured eventually everything would work out to where he would be good and everyone would know he was good. It was all gonna tie up. Start sharing your work when you believe in it. What I mean by believe in it is like in the moment that you made it where you committed. Even if your stuff sucks, it's not as good as the things you like, you know that it sucks. Start sharing it from the point that you believe in what you tried and you believe in like what you were doing. Don't feel like you've got to wait for stuff to be good. Once upon a time, you did have to wait for stuff to be good because all the media outlets to publish work were the newspaper and books and TV and documentaries or whatever. There weren't just these channels for artists to just make stuff and put it out in the world. Don't have a holdover that you have to be amazing now to share the things that you're making. You had to be amazing back then because there was a finite number of avenues to share your work. There are no longer a finite number of avenues, and now you just have to connect with people. And I think one of the things to remember is like, it depends on how you're doing stuff, but like there are probably people you follow like on Instagram where their work isn't great, but there's a spark of something that is interesting, and that's why you follow them. Assume the inverse, that you will find the people who see the spark in what you're doing now, and that you will get better and you will grow. And the other thing that will happen is that by publishing your stuff, even when you don't think it's good, you will learn that just putting your work out in the world and sharing it, that's just what you do as an artist. You don't hide all that shit in the closet. There's a fantastic line in, has anyone ever seen the movie Beautiful Losers about like Ed Templeton and Evan Hecox and Mike Mills and all these people and Margaret Kilgallen and shit? Okay, anyway, it's a fantastic documentary. So there's this great thing, Ed Templeton, Thomas Campbell visits him sometime in like 1993 or something like that. Thomas Campbell's this other painter, photographer, artist. He visits Ed Templeton, and Ed Templeton shows him the paintings he's been working on. And they're all in his closet, just kind of like stacked up in there. And he's like, what are you doing? You have to show these to people. And he's like, oh, that's what you do with them? So he started showing them to people. Like, it wasn't like he wasn't showing them to anyone. He'd just paint and then file them away, like waiting to get good. And Thomas Campbell, who at that point was already established and was like a known commodity, at least in a small world, was like, no. These have to come out of the closet and you have to find places to share them with people. That should be the attitude. You should be like a punk band. Punk bands do not wait until they're good to put out 7 inches and records and go on tour. They put that shit out now and they get good while they do it. Rant. Done. Okay. Create opportunities if they're not being offered to you. Have a portfolio online that people might buy from you or see where they can find you. So Ashley does a lot of these art fairs or like little pop-up shops. So she has to have like an audience that knows where to find that stuff. Invite people into collaborative opportunities, cross-market one another. That's indirectly related to your question. So she does these pop-up shops with other artists, or they do little trades or whatever. They do different things together. Again, trying to find an audience. Budget, make a spreadsheet. Again, be frugal. Get a good accountant tax person to explain what you can write off. Game changer. Very important. And then sell your work in more than one way. Shops, online, galleries, collaborations, etc. So again, more than one source of income. Hustle to get your stuff seen and to make opportunities. And don't assume there's one right way to do this. And then our last special guest panelist is Eric Yevak, who just got a master's degree in painting from MCAD. And then he immediately moved back to New York to live as a painter. He's a tremendous painter. This is some of his stuff. Okay, so his. Well, I love it. I worked as a graphic designer for years and hated it. I hated giving evil and stupid corporations my energy and ideas. I would come home drained. Live cheaply, but be in New York City or maybe LA. It's much easier getting attention and press if you live where the producers of media are. It sucks. The artists here aren't really better, but they get the attention and then the money. Right now, over the last 3 years, on a good month, I make a couple thousand. The average month, I make about 1,000. On a bad month, which is usually over the summer, I make almost nothing. So, the average he could make 12 grand a year. So, which could be good if you're making other money somewhere, but otherwise that is terrible and no way to live. I do commissioned work, but I don't talk about it. So that's a really common thing. Graphic designers always have the clients who they do work for, and then they don't share it. Or they have the graphic designers that they sign non-disclosure agreements. So you go work at an agency for 2-3 months, a year. You work on a bunch of stuff, and you're not allowed to tell anyone that you even worked on it. It's like if you go work at an agency who does Apple stuff, the agency is only allowed to say that they work with Apple. They don't show the work, and you're not even allowed to say that you worked on Apple stuff. So Eric does commission stuff, but he doesn't even tell people he does it. The people who make it in the art world, for the most part, come from rich, supportive families. That's just how life works. It doesn't mean that they aren't talented and driven, just that they have a safety net. If you don't come from money, find a hustle that you enjoy. I like selling drugs. Makes me feel free and like an outlaw, but I'm kind of a bad person, so don't be like me. This is real talk. It's about staying in the game and connections. The best painter in the Midwest has a lot harder time than a mediocre painter in a bigger city like New York. Also, if you're an artist, even a poor, struggling one, and we are all mostly poor, struggling artists in a big city, people will sleep with you. If you are a painter in a small town, you're kind of a joke to most people. And having attractive people to sleep with makes being poor and hungry a little better. You can also shower at their apartments and eat their food. Well, at least that's what I tell myself. You have to paint because that's what you do. You don't do it to make money. If you want to make money, go into real estate. It's hard and scary. You are a loser until you succeed, and then people still forget about you anyway. Echoing what Mike said, you might have a career that's short and brutal. You can always teach younger idiots to be painters in the middle of nowhere if you are lucky to find a job, but if you're trying to teach and you have never really been in the real art world fighting for every little thing, then you're kind of an asshole. Thank you, Eric. So again, it's the same answers. Everyone has different ways of getting at it. Like Michael does a lot of freelance work and he teaches. He teaches night classes here. He teaches in this program. He probably still teaches at the U of M. And then he does freelance illustrations and then he sells some paintings. Ashley, I'm not sure if she has a job right now. I think she works at a place called Treat, which is like a sister company of an ad agency called Knock, and they make patterns and product design. So she does that, or she might freelance for them. And then she also does freelance photo art direction for photo shoots and whatnot. And then she does commission work, and then she sells art. I had one person on this list that I had reached out to that I didn't get a response from, who actually makes a living as a painter. But I'm guessing that the answers would have been identical. Multiple flows of income, because you don't know if being a painter is ever really going to take off. And what all of these people have in common is that the work they make is the work they want to make, right? It would be much different if your vision of being a painter, the only requirement was, I sell paintings. If the only requirement is you sell paintings, then you are free to pander to people to your heart's content. But the point at which you do that, you probably will need to then find something to keep pure and creative if essentially you're treating painting like graphic design. Like, okay, what does my audience and my market want? How can I ensure that I make $62,000 this year off paintings? I think that you would have to make so many terrible decisions that you would ruin painting, but presumably every pop star in the world makes one terrible decision involving compromise after another and makes millions of dollars. But you don't see a lot of artists that, like the rich and famous ones, that got there by abandoning their principles. I bet there's a lot of sort of like middle classy artists who pander and they can pull whatever, $40,000 a year or something, selling paintings where they're trying to engineer something that other people will like. But the serious ones struggle for decades doing all sorts of shit. And then when they break through, they are still them, right? Like the sort of famous painters we always hear about, they're them. Like they do their thing. And they're not going to be mixed up with other people. When you pander, you're almost certainly going to be mixed up with other people. So I think it just depends on what you're after. My assumption in this question is, I want to paint in a way that is fulfilling and expresses what I'm about. I don't assume it's, I simply want to exchange cash for the activity of moving a paintbrush. To me, that seems terrible, but on the other hand, I do the same thing for no, I don't. I kind of do the same thing for graphic design. In general, I don't. So it's a different animal, but I assume you want creative freedom. I assume you want to express yourself. I assume that you want paintings to be a reflection of where you're at. The only way that you can do that is by doing lots of other things that help to keep that intact, and then hopefully through hustle, luck, perseverance, that turns into something. But it's not uncommon to not be able to make a living off art for someone who went to art school from ages 19 to 22 or 23 or whatever it is, that when they finally made a living off of it, it was like they're 42. It's like, holy shit, all of a sudden like you make a living off art. That's a long, hard slog. It's not guaranteed. And that's why I think like if you have something else you like to do that you can make money off of, awesome. Because there's nothing worse than just being miserable all the time. Like you're miserable because like you want to be a painter and everything you're doing is wrapped up around it, and then you're miserable because all day long you have this shitty job and all you can think about is the other stuff that you want to be doing. Wouldn't it be good to have a mildly gratifying job where if you just do a good job, you'll be paid fairly and you can build up a life and you can get like actual good vacation time? Like how sick would it be? Like, I get a month's worth of vacation and then I can paint for 2 of those weeks just hardcore. The other 2 weeks go to the beach or whatever it is. So that is how to do it. Or that is 3 people's how to do it. I was definitely surprised that they basically all said the same things with mildly different ways of actually making the money. Hopefully I haven't scared people off of like a life in the arts or of creative work. That is not my intention. But there's definitely don't make the mistakes that I have made. It sucks. Don't have credit card debt in pursuit of being like a purist.